Nice,
Hey,
wonderful.
George, good to see you again.
Yeah, George, well, you were here for the dress rehearsal.
Yeah, yeah. George is 24
I'll
hours
do
early.
I'll do a comparison between the two.
Good. Well, good to see you. I've got a lot of people here: Tristan and Arian and Matthew, and you work together. Is that correct, Phil?
If it's my Matthew
I
Feenan,
think
yes, it
yes,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, great. So Matthew and I work together in helping early stage companies. Matthew's a phenomenal BDR who's been working with you for several years now. So good to have you here. Matt, thanks for joining us.
And we've got a bit of a guest of honor in Dan Pfister. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Stu, how are you?
We have a little story to share.
I have a great story to share.
Yes, yeah.
Story of your generosity.
Well, thank you, but much more than that, and we're gonna get into that because really our discussion was so interesting because I would say it's illustrative of what weed strategy does for us. So good to have you here. We've got a lot of people here, and I would say we should jump in because we're now 2 minutes past our start time.
Definitely. Yeah. Let's do that.
Well, I'll just jump in.
If you could, sorry, Joe, I was going to say, if you could put yourself on mute, everybody, and then we'll give you plenty of chance to talk as we get into the program. But thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, and just a personal thing, if you would turn on your cameras, I would love to see your faces instead of the black screens. That would be terrific. But let's get it started. Let's get it started. So today we're running a free workshop. Obviously, it's free. Nobody's been charged anything, but a workshop on how to cultivate unfair advantages in your business, and they're just what they are is a rather elusive concept, apparently, because, well, first of all, if you think about what weeds do, let's think about a dandelion, how the dandelion spreads itself. It has seeds that do what most seeds don't. They fly around, and they can fly. Actually, they can fly for up to hundreds of miles, and they probe every possible opportunity to take root. And that's just so unlike, let's say, I don't know, pine cones or acorns, that so many seeds that just drop to the ground. But the dandelion is using an unfair advantage there, and it turns out that's a big part of what dandelions do. So one of those connections is rather noisy. Not sure which, but anyway, and so what we're here to do today, hopefully, is to start that process for you of figuring out what unfair advantages you have now and how to cultivate new ones. And so we're going to work with. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk. Phil and I will talk a bit about what the nature of unfair advantages are first, because I think it's important to know that, have that in mind, and then we're going to take about 20 minutes to work with some of you live and just examine what your unfair advantages are, because you might have some that you don't realize you have, and then also to help you cultivate new ones. And I think that is, well, actually both of those are exciting, because you'll have new advantages in your business. And really, I think Phil, would you agree that, I mean, I keep saying that businesses have no business being in business without having unfair advantages. And so they're just necessary. And then finally, we'd like to get your feedback, because we'd like to turn this into something much more regular. And we'd love to get together with a group and work out what these unfair advantages are, and help people be accountable and help people grow their businesses. So we want to brainstorm with you a little bit about how we might do that. So, Phil, we've been talking a lot. We've been collaborating. You're one of my primary collaborators, and really just collaborating as we have it creates an unfair advantage, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Stu. Just to give everyone a bit of background as to how Stu and I came together, is I took part in an event a couple of months ago where Stu was a mentor, came in and talked to a couple of operators about what gives us a brief to deal with. And the brief that we had was this question of what's your unfair advantage? And that really got me thinking about, well, unfair advantage I know is a concept of competitive advantage, but how am I really using what I have that is perhaps unique to me to help me position my business, myself, as being a leader in a field that no one can really argue with, no one can really compete with. And Stu opened my eyes to this. And I thought, in the early days, I thought, this guy's written a book about weeds. I mean, come on, is that stuff even going to be relevant? Until I read the book. And then I read his book and I went, wow, okay, there's a lot about the way in which we go about building businesses that we can take weed strategy from and use, and particularly this piece about unfair advantage. So Stu and I started to explore it. I've become quite obsessed with this idea of looking at people's competitive advantage and unfair advantage. And that's what brings us here today. So yeah, it's a fascinating area, Stu, and you've opened my eyes to really how we could position ourselves, and hopefully we'll be able to help a few people today with that.
Sure. Well, thank you, Phil. And, this isn't a promo for my book, but I probably should hold it up so you know what book we're talking about. And so, I wanted to say where this came from, because it is rather odd to be talking about weeds and business. But I was driving down the freeway a long time ago, and I noticed something that we've all seen millions of times, I suppose. And it was a weed or a dandelion growing from a crack in the concrete median in the middle of the Santa Monica freeway. And there are 12 lanes of traffic, 6 going each way, rushing tires. This is no place for a plant to take root, and yet there it was in the middle of that in that crack in the middle of the freeway, and I wondered, how on earth did it get there? And of course we know exactly how it got there. I just mentioned the seeds. We've seen those seeds flying around, and they probe every possible opportunity to take root, and they end up taking root in some places where they really shouldn't. I mean, they'll take root. They take root on rooftops and so forth where there's no soil, and so they probe every possible opportunity to expand their domain. And I thought that was just incredible, and it looked kind of happy. It didn't look like it was upset that it ended up in the middle of the freeway. It just was happy running its process wherever it landed. And I thought all of that was just really admirable. And I wondered, what is it about weeds that makes them so special? Because there are no apple trees or petunias growing out of cracks in the middle of concrete medians in the middle of freeways. That doesn't happen. But so it only happens with certain plants. They're quite aggressive, and they have these mechanisms, we'll say, that allow them to do things that other plants can't. So it really got me thinking, what is it about weeds that's so special about them? Do they have a model that they all use, that they all follow? And if they do, is it a model that we can apply to our businesses? And it turns out they do have a model. And I think it's actually the theory of everything about growing anything. And so it's very simple. They leverage this is going to sound odd, a fierce mindset, but it's evident that they have a mindset when you watch how they operate in our yards, for example, or in our gardens. When you try to get rid of them, they come right back. If you cut them down with your mower or something, they go right back to work immediately, running their process and growing right back. So nothing gets them down. They really have an amazing mindset. And so they leverage that fierce mindset and unfair advantages against collective scale. They never do anything alone. And they do it according to a process that's been honed over, well, in their case, millions of years. We need to have processes as well. If we don't, then we're rather lost. We don't even build value into our businesses. So that sort of defines this nature of weeds. They deal with what is. There are no emotions getting in the way of, let's say, assessing what's happening and then dealing with it. They don't have emotions in terms of saying, well, that really depresses me, or whatever it is. They don't have emotions, so they don't get in their way. They deal with what is. They never do anything without an unfair advantage. They always, or I should say, they never do anything alone. They're always collaborating. And they always focus on what makes them win, which I would say is their process. But finally, and maybe most amazingly, they thrive best in disrupted ground. So all of this, I think, just qualifies them as a wonderful source of insight as to how we should grow our businesses. And of course, today we're focusing on unfair advantages, but there's a lot more to it. And Phil, you and I have had a lot of conversation about unfair advantages. And I'm kind of curious. I have my favorite example. Well, I've got a bunch of them, but I have one favorite example that I think is just really stands out. And I wonder, who stands out to you as the most incredible example of using an unfair advantage in the business?
There's a lot of brands out there that I'm sure we've all seen that really are doing this very well. And one of the examples that I've been talking about recently is even within the travel sector, a company like Ryanair. So Ryanair is a cheap airline flight in the UK. I mean, cheap is probably understating it. They really are the market leader on price, but they're an absolutely no-frills airline. And what's interesting about the success that they've built is in a very crowded space of airlines and low cost and ancillary revenues sold through sandwiches and what have you on flights. These guys at Ryanair have really managed to carve out their unfair advantage, both in price, but also in a number of other ways. So operationally, the way in which they stick with a single aircraft, how they use secondary airports as their hubs, lots of different ways. But the one that probably we're most aware of in this country is just their aggressive nature of marketing. They almost have, I couldn't give a shit type approach to marketing. And their CEO is quite controversial in that way, because it's like, you're paying £25 for an airline ticket. What do you expect type attitude? And he pulls it off so well. And I think that is an unfair advantage for something like an airline. When there are many copying their model, really keeps them front and center right out there. So that's one example I have, Stu. What about what stands out for you?
Well, one of the I don't know if all of you are aware of the Total Wheat Award, but I launched that with the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center this year. That's one of my collaborations. That's one of my unfair advantages, to have them as a collaborator, actually. So, and really to have the whole Total Wheat Award mechanism in play. It's going to be happening every spring. And so anyway, one of the awardees was Clear. So we have a number of people from the UK, and then also from the States. Raise your hands if you're in the States. Of course I am. Okay, so there are a bunch of us. Who knows has anyone ever noticed when you've traveled that there's this long line to check in through security? That's just regular TSA, and then you can go into TSA pre-check if you've taken the time to do a security or background search, et cetera, with TSA. And then there's Clear. Has anyone noticed those lines? They're always empty. Yeah, they're always empty. We're standing in a line that might take an hour and a half to get through, but then there's Clear, and Clear operates on a completely different basis. You've got to pay an annual fee to be a member of Clear, but they have these. While there are all these just absolutely crammed queues or lines to get through security, then there's Clear, and if you're using Clear, you walk through this empty gateway, and they take you right to the head of that whole mess. And I think one of their great unfair advantages, a few of them, but one of their great unfair advantages is you're standing in line. Everyone is standing in line at these airports. Millions of people are daily, and they're saying, "Oh my God, there's got to be a better way." They're feeling that pain right then and there. And there's Clear with their empty lines, and all you have to do to sign up is go through. Of course, you sign up, but then they take a few biometric imprints of your iris and your fingerprints, and then you're at the front of the line. It takes about 5 minutes to sign up, and you've gotten through this line. So I think that's an incredibly unfair advantage. Also, because who would have known that? I mean, when you go through these airport lobbies and you see they're just crammed with people, they're obviously sort of beyond capacity and not working properly, and it's very, very crowded. But who would have known that you could set up another line, an extra line? A private company could do that in the middle of a federal agency's turf, and be able to set up shop that way. I mean, I would have never guessed that you could have done that. And so I should say, then if we're talking about unfair advantages, they're not really unfair. They're just incredibly clever, and they're deciding factors in getting business, and they're advantages that competitors really maybe have an impossible time matching. And Clear is a great example of that, because if someone wanted to start another service like that, where would they put the line? There's no room. So that's a great unfair advantage. And Phil, there's one other one. I'll just bring it up real quickly, but I think the company that has the most unfair advantages on the planet is probably SpaceX. There are a lot of others vying for that title, but SpaceX, good God, they put cargo into orbit at much lower cost than all the other state financed agencies and startups and stuff. Actually, Rocket Lab might be cheaper. They're much smaller rockets, but they're not in operation yet. So, I mean, that's another big advantage SpaceX is. It's the only let's say, space agency or company that's putting cargo in space with reusable boosters. I mean, I guess Blue Origin is close, but they're not putting any sort of cargo up in space. They're not delivering anything to the space station yet. It's not a serious space company yet, but so, you know, they're SpaceX, and they're launching these cargoes into space, and these boosters come back down and they land propulsively. And it was stuff of science fiction only a few years ago, and now we've just become utterly used to it. And that's just one. We can watch the way that they develop these things, whether it's Starship or Falcon, and there's this try-fail, try-succeed mentality and methodology to their expansion of their technology that I think a lot of other people or a lot of other companies just don't have the stomach for. And so they just have a lot of unfair advantages. Would you agree? I mean, I think that's...
Yeah, totally. And you might be thinking, okay, these are huge organizations with unlimited resources doing some pretty amazing things. So we want to bring it back down to earth and really talk about what are the things that are going on within those companies that are defining these unfair advantages. And Stu, you have a framework that helps us think about this on a personal level. And I think it would also be useful just to share what we see our unfair advantages from, both in how you helped me discover mine, but also what you see yours being as the author of the strategy, the weed strategy itself.
Well, I just, I observed there's a WEEDS model, which is an acronym for Weed-Inspired Enterprise Expansion and Domination Strategies. And I really just wanted to gather up the whole framework that WEEDS use to create these unfair advantages. And so it starts with seed strategy and seed pod strategy. Seeds are analogous to anything that causes people to become aware of us and form the intent to transact with us in some way. So that could be all kinds of things. It could be design and buzz and social media and lots of different ways that happens. Of course, marketing is a part of that, and seed pods are multipliers of that. It's using the infrastructure or reach of others to extend the reach of your seeds, which is what seed pods do, and then thorn strategy to protect your turf. Their patents and trademarks, protected IP is a great unfair advantage or source of unfair advantage. And that goes all the way down through root strategy and soil strategy to control the conditions around us in which we operate. And one of my favorites is vine strategy. Vines are interesting because there is an infrastructure to them. But they're basically tubes with leaves and a root. But what they do then is borrow the infrastructure of anything around them. So they'll climb up on a tree or a fence or a building, and they'll gain access to sunlight, really dominant access to sunlight. In fact, sometimes they kill the trees they're on, but that's a really interesting framework for collaboration, I think. And that's one of the ones that I've really, really taken to as a way to generate unfair advantages is to create these incredible new collaborations. Instead of just doing it all myself and by myself, I'm creating all these incredible collaborations, including this one with Phil, that create new unfair advantages. I mean, one of the things that Phil and I are doing is we've given each other access to each other's followings and client bases, and that's a big new unfair advantage. Phil, we're at 20 past, and so we could talk a lot about unfair advantage, about the nature of unfair advantage, but I'd like to move on to working with some of the people in the group to hear about their unfair advantages. Before we do that, though, this might be a good time to introduce Dan Pfister again, because Dan's you've got a really interesting project this month, don't you? Tell us about that project. And you're muted.
You hear me now?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so So basically, I've been trying to write this book for a couple of years, and I haven't had the focus, or it just takes, I've got so many competing priorities. Got two businesses, there's a lot going on. So I thought, if I could write this book in 30 days, if I committed to that, it would really focus me, make me get it done. And so that's what I did. And I wanted to do it in public to make sure that I actually got the work done. So I didn't, take it off the front burner.
Yeah. So you've been doing this countdown. And I think, are we on day 28?
Yep.
Are you on day 28?
Somebody
I
is.
feel like we're all riding along with you. But something like day 28. So on day 14 or so, I picked up on it and I saw that you wanted to write a book in 30 days. And I thought, no, Phil, you don't want to do that. I actually do see why you want to just say, look, I need to take some concentrated time and get this thing moving, which is great, actually. But I was thinking, gosh, you don't want to just say, I wrote this book in 30 days, because people will say, that's not really a good reason for me to invest my interest and time and belief behind this. And so I asked asked Dan if he'd like to have a conversation. It was going to be a 15-minute conversation. And I was going to say, Dan, you really need to put more into this. You need to be interviewing people. You need to pull a lot more into the book than just writing about what you know about, because it's about win back, which is a great subject. But we ended up having an hour and a half conversation, and it was fascinating because what we ended up doing was a weed strategy consultation. Neither of us expected to do that, but what we ended up with then was some really wonderful new direction for the book.
Cracked a NATO membership for the Ukrainians, but
Oh,
this
somebody's-
pledge.
There we go. Good. So we ended up with a lot of really interesting directions for you to take. And we were talking about unfair advantages and about particularly about using collaborations as unfair advantages. I mean this to be about you, Dan, not me, but I did mention that I have this collaboration with the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, and that brings a whole really incredible new set of bona fides to my book, to how to grow your business like a weed, because it's the Total Weed Award is based on the book. But also we're going to be pulling in a media partner, and NASDAQ has media partnerships throughout the business media sector. And so suddenly my book is going to have a media partner, and a business media partner. I mean, I don't know who it'll be. We're still working on that, but someone like Forbes or Inc. or CNBC, Entrepreneur Magazine, those are incredible unfair advantages. And so we started looking at how you could build some of those for your book. And I ended up saying, you know what? When you get this together, I'm going to introduce you to my agent. So, and because I was saying, don't, if you're going to do this, let's say if we write a book, we don't know if we're going to write other books. So make that book the best thing it can possibly be. And one form of that is to not relegate it to self-publishing, but see if you can get an agent, see if the agent can get you into maybe a major publisher, or maybe it's an indie publisher, but still you have the advantage of this publisher has vetted what you're doing. It's gone through a whole process that self-published books don't go through mostly, I would say. And suddenly you have a much more impactful project, would you say?
Oh, 100%. I mean, the whole idea behind the book was that people really don't understand the value lying dormant in their past customers. And if I could simply put that out in a very simple way, in an allegory, that would be strong enough to make for an impactful book. And what I found was that you're absolutely right. There's a hell of a lot more to this. If you want to really make an impact, there's a number of things that you've got to do. And you walked me through a lot of that. So, you talked about the mindset, you talked about, the unfair advantage, the radical collaboration, and this all added up to like this much bigger vision for the book. And for that, I'm really, really grateful.
Well, I think you're a total weed, Dan. I'm just saying. So, okay. Well, thank you, Dan, because I really wanted to share your story, although I also would like to give others a chance to go through this process of let's take a look at what your unfair advantages are. And so would anyone like to just volunteer? Because I sent everybody an email yesterday or this morning to say, hey, give some thought to what your unfair advantages are. so we can talk about them a little bit. Does anyone want to step into the limelight here? I should say spotlight.
I can share something real quick.
Yeah.
All right. I will just comment on this, and you tell me if this is an unfair advantage. I think could be. Like I say, I started my company about 3 months ago, my freight brokerage, after 4 years driving trucks. And I thought that I could make a difference. And I've been trying to send cold emails, thousands of them, making phone calls, even meeting shippers face to face here in the area in Fontana, California. This is the trucking capital of the world. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of shippers here. So, like I say, it's been a little hard to find customers right now. The supply chain is a little slow right now with the economy and everything. But I've been thinking right now and come back maybe to drive trucks. And in the meantime, contact shippers. Every time I drop a load to a shipper, deliver a load, talk with the people in the warehouse, talk with the shipper manager, and tell them, that I'm also a freight broker, and drop a business card or whatever, keep doing my truck driving, and when I get 2 or 3 customers, I quit for good truck driving, and I focus completely on my company, on the freight brokerage.
Well, I want to say something about that because the one big difference between us and Weeds is that we're taught to be self-reliant, and really, I would say I don't know if this makes sense. I'll go into more detail if it doesn't, but we're taught to be self-reliant, which causes us to tend to gravitate toward one-to-one leverage. Does that make sense? I mean, so we do it ourselves. And I would say, Andy, that one of the reasons why you want to stop being out on the road is because it's all one-to-one leverage. I mean, your output is directly tied to how many hours you drive. And if you can, in freight brokerage allows you to multiply that. Well, would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So I would say, Phil, feel free to jump in as well, but I would say that one area that you should look at really quickly is finding ways to create collaborations, finding these strategic partnerships that you can. Oh, did we lose? Looks like we just lost Phil.
No, I'm here.
Oh no. Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. Anyway. Oh yeah, there you are. But so I would be looking for ways to create collaborations quickly, because I think what you're describing is that what I've been saying, which is that if you don't have unfair advantages, if businesses don't have if we don't have unfair advantages as people, we don't last. I mean, we don't compete well. And so I would say that one of the quickest paths would be to find ways to create some form of collaboration with, I don't know. Well, I guess maybe I don't know enough about the trucking industry, and I'd have to spend more time with you. But maybe some of the shippers, find a way that you can create new value. I mean, or new benefit to them, so that there is some way to create this, to create a collaboration. I would say one of the hardest things for because I think we could also describe what you're doing as a form of a startup. And one of the toughest things for startups is they start out with really nothing in terms of unfair. Well, they might have something. They might have a patent or something. I mean, they might have IP going in, but basically nothing. They don't have a customer base. And Phil, this is your specialty. I mean, Phil is my collaborator, but way beyond all that, he's the founder and CEO of RevCelerate, which helps startups get to revenue quickly, which is exactly Andy's problem. Phil, what would you have to say about it?
Yeah, I'd come at it from a different angle, Andy. I think you said it there yourself. There are thousands of shippers in the area. And the question top of my mind is, what is it about your service that's different? What's better? What's unique? Is there anything about the way you're going about your business that sets you apart from many of the others? Perhaps you could answer that question.
Well, Phil, the main advantage is what I've been mentioning, that I've been a truck driver for so long. most freight brokers is people that is, all their life in sales, in an office, behind a computer. They don't actually know the work that a truck driver does. And that is an advantage when I'm talking to shippers, because I know both fields. And when I go to them, I can give better rates, bet in a better way, trucking companies. Yeah, that's a little advantage, but I believe is concrete, is real.
Yeah,
I think that's a good
I mean,
start.
that already starts.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Phil.
Sorry, Stu. Yeah, so that already starts to sound a little bit like you're building an unfair advantage. So what you're saying is you're coming from a position of actually understanding what it takes to deliver the freight, to haul it. So you've got the driver's perspective, and if you can show that you've got the operator's perspective as well, that might be unique. There's a couple of tools here that we can touch on quickly before we get deeper into this with some other people. But there are some things that I learned from my time, both in building businesses and also business school, is there's a framework around Porter's competitive strategies that really looks at businesses competing on 3 levels around cost, focus, and differentiation. And when you think about that, Andy, for your creating your unfair advantage, it's like, where am I really going to compete here? Can I compete on cost? Am I really focused in a particular area, or can I really differentiate? And market leadership around differentiation is built on 3 things. And this is something for you to think about as you build your unfair advantage. 3 things are customer intimacy, product leadership, and operational excellence. And if you can build a real strong argument in each of those areas, you start to stand out from the crowd. So the fact that you've been a truck driver and you understand both sides of the equation, could you build an unfair advantage around operational excellence and customer intimacy, because you've been there and done it and you know what they're dealing with? That will influence what your product looks like. And if you can shape that product leadership to do something that's really unique, then suddenly your freight firm stands out above all the others. And I think these lessons are applicable regardless of what type of business you're building, whether it's a haulage company or whether it's a software company. If you can think about, how am I going to differ? How am I going to, where am I going to focus? And how can I build this customer intimacy? If I can do that, I start to stand out from the noise.
You're right. It makes sense. Yes, makes sense. Totally. Like a focus more in that field. Yeah.
I think one really
be laser focused.
One real primary point here is when you say that being a driver is an unfair advantage, you need to really give a lot of thought about why that's an unfair advantage to your prospective customers and prospective collaborators as well. But what is it about that experience that qualifies you more than everyone else? Does that make sense?
And that's a really good point, Stu. I just wanted to build on that point, because when we talk about unfair, this is for other people thinking about the same thing. When we build on unfair advantage, when Stu put to me what my unfair advantage is, I mean, I'm a commercial guy. I've been a seller most of my career. But what I love doing is working with early stage companies and figuring out how to build their go-to-market strategy and increasing the odds of success they do that. Now, there's lots of us there. Richard does it on a CMO scale. Lots of other people I know kind of do those jobs. How do you stand out? What makes you different? And for me, it was 2 things. One, that I'd got an opportunity to work across lots of different companies to see how they came together. And there's a lot of learnings there. But probably my real unfair advantage is prior to business, I spent 5 years serving in the Royal Marines. And I very quickly realized that building an early stage business was just like operating behind lines as a commando. And you might think, what the hell's that got to do with anything? Believe me, you operate in a fluid environment. No plan survives first contact with the market. You've got to improvise, adapt, and overcome. If that's not building a business, I don't know what is. And my unfair advantage was, as I saw this, and I turned that into, right, I have a process, a methodology, a structure of how new startup business goes to market, around how you organize yourself, what you do, the discipline that you take to that. But knowing that you have to be hyper flexible because no plan's going to survive first contact with the market, that was my unfair advantage. And I get paid when businesses see that and they go, I need this guy with this flexibility that understands what I know. So this is what you need to think about when you're building your own unfair advantage is, what have I got that no one else can take? And Stu, you were the one that said to me, Phil, no one's going to take that away from you. What you did and what you married together is so unique.
It's an incredible thing. I think those of us who aren't commandos, I'm not a commando, and I respect that. And it gives you a I don't know what to call it, a platform perhaps that that you can speak to what it takes to persevere in really rough, well, just life and death conditions. And so that's a great unfair advantage. I do want to keep moving a little bit so we can get a few more people in. And so,
Yeah.
Anita, you raised your hand, and I see you're still on mute, but yes.
I'm good. Well, thank you very much for this. I popped on Dan's LinkedIn post, I think an hour and a half ago, and saw that this was going live. And I've been watching Dan and his journey. So I thought, hey, why not, come and attend and see. So since you asked for people to put their hand up, I figure I will as well. Very quickly, 20 plus years academic research. I have a business now where we work with customer success teams for SaaS companies, so software as a service, helping them with customer retention. So this is what we do. We've been doing it now for 3 years. I think one of our advantages is that academic research background that we have, which means there's rigor, much like Phil said. We have ways of doing things that, anybody can cut their hair, but we know what a home haircut looks like versus a professional haircut. And it's no different with creating surveys and interviews, which is really what we sell. And then off of that, we build a customer retention strategy, which I will tell you, most companies, they have sales strategies, they have marketing strategies, but they really, really lack customer retention strategies. So given our current economic market, things are a little tough, and companies surprisingly are not looking at retention. Most of them are going back to what they know, which is acquisition. Let's just get more customers. Doesn't matter if they're a crappy fit. So this is kind of where I'm at. That's kind of the 30,000 foot view.
That's interesting, and I think the academic approach probably is I guess it depends on how it's presented, but if it's presented as one of your unfair advantage, I want to say this too. One of the best unfair advantages we can have is the ability to confer unfair advantages on our clients. I think that's what you're describing, right? I mean, when I'm creating direct mail campaigns with personalized cartoons, and I know that they get through, and I know they break through a lot, and that they get a kick out of them and all that. I know that I'm giving I knew this. I mean, that was what I used to do a long time ago. I knew I was giving my clients a new unfair advantage, and that's exactly, Anita, what you're doing. But rather than me talking any further, does anyone have? I'd love to hear from the group. What's your feedback on Anita's unfair advantage? And Marco, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of add to that it's really easy to look outward and try and find kind of new customers. And we've learned recently in our own company that actually we have a really good group of people who believe in what we do already. And by spending time actually getting close to them on a more deeper connection and a deeper emotional level has actually brought more business and more kind of sustained success from those that obviously take a lot more kind of effort to convince and kind of bring people over the line into what your vision and your kind of approach is. So yeah, I mean, that was just my thought on that. And I'm very happy to give my own perspective on what the homework I did before this call. I was thinking about what my unfair advantage could be, but we can finish with Anita first if necessary.
Okay, well, yeah, although we want to, I mean, this hour is going to go, actually, we're already at the time that we should tell us real quickly what it is. And Anita, thank you so much. Marco, just jump in real quickly and tell us.
I can do a quick one. Yeah, I mean, I run and own a B2B tech marketing agency, of which there are many in the world, and we're doing some work at the moment with a partner on like, why are we special? Like, what are we special? And I'm its third owner, and this is quite morbid, but I realized it's actually something that can be used to kind of show a vision that is different to most in my industry. Is my business partner died last year, very sadly and very young. And going through that made me realize that there's a huge amount of situations that can happen to any business owner and a need to kind of communicate to customers, communicate to partners, and communicate internally to teams. And the more I thought about that, the more I thought that as a very small kind of agency, we've actually been privy either from our own experiences of things that have happened to us or things that have happened to our clients that we've helped them through, that when we talk to new people, for example, you could describe anything from kind of threats, death, illness, clients collapsing, like M&A activity, like legal attacks, blackmail. In a short career, I suppose, I've experienced it, or our company has, or our clients have. And when it comes down to marketing and the power of words, and we particularly specialize in PR, we've done the experience for a company. So the first time they experience this emerging situation, no matter how difficult, I mean, I'd say to anyone in our space, like, we've been through the wars, no war like Phil, obviously, but we've been through the wars ourselves. And I mean, we know how to kind of guide you through it. And I think there's an untapped advantage there to take something that was very tragic and hard for me personally to go through, but try and fight kind of like lightness and enjoy. And I'm sorry if that puts it down on anyone's day, but
well, I think
an unusual one, I suppose.
that certainly is I mean, it does humanize you, and because the rest of us lean in. Oh my gosh, what was that? What happened there? And if that's an interesting one, actually. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your partner.
It's all right. It was a hard 18 months, and I realized I didn't want it to be my story, and it certainly isn't. But
sometimes we don't choose them, right?
Yeah, we experienced
they just are.
We experienced it, and it's the way it is. So, yeah, I'm always trying to find like the positive that I can kind of bring from a very hard situation. But I mean, unfortunately, and probably for many people to be blessed by, like, I don't know many other agencies who have gone through that change or other situations I described, or through our clients. So, yeah, I mean, there's probably something in there long term.
Yeah. Well, Marco, thank you. Thank you so much. I wish we could keep doing this, and actually, because we could go on, I think, for quite a long time, and we'd hear some fascinating, some fascinating unfair advantages, and I think we discover new ones. What I would like to do, though, is like to transition now, because we also, Phil and I have been working on our collaboration together now for it's about 4 or 5 months, I would say. Would you say? And so we want to start turning this into something that brings. Really, it's all like the focus is about helping people grow their businesses, and so we wanted to ask you to help us design the ultimate growth experience for business owners, and I suppose others, but certainly for business owners. So if you wouldn't mind indulging us, we have some really cool ideas that we've been talking about. Phil, we've been talking about doing a weekend strategy summit somewhere in the world, and you've had some amazing suggestions as to where to do it, but somewhere where it's a bucket list kind of location. I'm not going to reveal it. You tell us where is it where you were suggesting?
Yeah, I think it's just a good example that in 1 hour, it's really hard to give people probably what they were hoping to get from a discussion like this. I mean, we've very lightly touched on a few things, and Anita, sorry we couldn't go deeper on yours, but I love this academic angle, and I'd love to talk to you more about it afterwards. And Marco, I think Stu sums it up around the human aspect of what you bring, which is ultimately what PR is all about. And if we can find a way to use that as leverage, because I lost a young person in my life, a guy who worked for me for a while this year, and it's a very young guy and really hard to kind of deal with. So I know a little bit about what you've dealt with, but perhaps not on such a great level. So very hard to, I think, kind of cover all that. And this is why we're turning to this idea of, if we were to get together and spend more time looking at really crafting what things like unfair advantages are, or even the rest of the weed strategy, would people be willing to do it? And Stu and I were chucking this idea around, where in the world would you like to do this? Where would we hold these things? If price wasn't the issue, where could we do this? Where could we get people together? And I came up with a couple of suggestions, one of which was a members club in Scotland, which is way too expensive and we couldn't even get into. It's where Madonna got married, called Skibo Castle. I went there for my 50th. It's a phenomenal place. So when you're a millionaire, go buy a subscription to it. Well, we're not going to go do it there. But the other couple of places we talked about is, hey, how about if we went somewhere like Iceland or we went to Morocco? Now, I've been to Morocco in the last year, and I got to say, it just blew my mind. Richard Branson has a phenomenal hotel there up in the Atlas Mountains called the Casbah. Can you imagine spending a weekend there working through all these things and building unfair advantage of applying weed strategy? Because we just won't have the time to do it here, Stu, will we? You know, could we do that if we got people together? And our question really was, are people even interested in doing that? Would they want to come and do something like that? Or would they prefer to do things like this? Would they prefer to have sessions where we're talking in more depth, either as a group or a one-to-one, about defining the weed strategy from your perspective?
Yeah. So and that's what it's been. I mean, my mind has been exploding actually with, oh my God, where could we do, if we did these just small groups, let's say 10 or 12 people, and it's such a small group, it's really rather portable. So we could do it anywhere. And where would you, if you could do it anywhere, where would you do it? Where would you have a weekend growth summit? And we've talked about Bora Bora and Salzburg, and even I was going to say even Australia, even Antarctica. There's actually a resort on Antarctica. I didn't know there was, but there is, called the White Desert. And man, I would love to just set foot on Antarctica, let alone run a session like this. But so that's one possibility, was that, and the other was, well, maybe what we ought to do is start up a mastermind. And so I don't know how often we'd meet. Maybe it's twice a month, and we would. I think I don't know if we got a chance to see it, but the real value is in having a lot of smart people in the room, which is what we have right now, and helping each other come up with these. Well, just brainstorming, but coming up with these unfair advantages, and holding each other accountable. So I think there's also a great benefit to doing that. With all that said, I would love to. Does anyone have any thoughts about which would be? What do you just? I could put a poll up, but I'd love to hear what people have to say as well. Anyone want to jump in?
I mean, I think my accountant would tell me off if I said I was going to Antarctica, but I mean, I'm all for small groups and getting to know people more and getting deeper on the topic. I mean, a new environments always help me, but yeah, I'm open to hearing more.
Bit closer to home though, Marco.
I mean, if we have a good year, maybe not. I don't know.
Okay.
See how it goes.
Yeah, I'm going to put a quick poll up. Oh my gosh, it wants me to create a poll. So while we're talking, I'll put one together. But I'd love to, if anyone else would like to speak up about what sort of format, if it's even of interest, but what sort of format we might be able to do this together. I'd love to hear your thoughts. George.
Yeah, I kind of along the lines of Marco, thinking it's easier for me to focus in short terms periods of time versus a couple of times a month than to go on a trip. That being said, I think Antarctica would be awesome because Antarctica is the only continent I don't have a LinkedIn contact on, and I've been working on that.
Yeah, well, I think good.
Maybe we build up to that, George. We'll build up to Antarctica. Yeah.
So I've just popped the poll up.
Survey up.
Just popped the poll up. So far, Mastermind has it 4 out of 4. Looks like.
Make it 5.
Mastermind's doing really well. Nobody wants to go to Antarctica except for George and me. And
yeah, I think we all want to go to Antarctica, but yeah,
it's not my accountant I'm frightened of. It's my wife.
Oh well,
yeah. You'd have to take Richard. You have to take her with you. I mean, there's no way. I mean, I'm not even sure that she would let me go to Morocco without her. She's like, no way. I'm coming with you. But oddly enough, we thought about that and we said, well, maybe it is about bringing your partner so that everybody can get some enjoyment out of it. Yeah.
Well, I think the poll is spoken as 10 out of 10 mastermind.
Right.
So, well, thank you for doing that. Phil, if we're going to do anything, we're going to have to do a mastermind. Looks like. And
yeah, I think we build up to it, Stu. I mean, maybe we think about more practical sessions, smaller group sessions that would really help people. I mean, what do people think in terms of we put this together, and I wanted to do it the typical way. There's a control freak of putting slides and stuff together, and Stu went, no, let's have a conversation and just take people through the process. But what do people think of this format, this conversational format, and what do you think might work better if we did it differently in the future? Anyone want to chime in?
I'll go. I know that I'm just brand new
Thanks,
to this,
Annie.
but I've been in many masterminds. Some of the best ones are where there's a little bit of teaching first, or there's a theme for each one. If you just sort of show up and you don't know what's going on, then it might not, that particular session might not be as great for you as another one. But if there's teaching, I find that tends to draw me in versus just sort of a free flowing. Honestly, like when it's just free flowing, they tend to die out after a few sessions because there's not enough to bring people to them.
That's interesting.
So
feedback.
having some structured,
That's
program.
interesting feedback. I think one of the things that, well, again, Dan, I'm talking about Dan Pfister. I'm talking about our conversation. We had that was an amazing conversation because we were talking about just that. We were putting in terms of weed strategy, so that one of the unfair advantages you have is that everybody has old clients or lapsed clients that they would benefit greatly from if they could reinstate them as clients. So there's a universal need there, right, George? So there's a universal need there, and then the more we started delving into what new unfair advantages you could draw into this, and I think the big one was, my gosh, you need to start up if you started up a collaboration with, let's say, and I've forgotten it's an acronym for retired executives, but SCORE. And it's an acronym for an organization of retired executives who offer counsel to people who are in business now. But if you could create a collaboration with them in some one obvious way, because I just did it with NASDAQ, is to create an award, perhaps. But if you could create a collaboration with them, it would create an incredible new, I don't want to keep using the same term over and over again. It would be an unfair advantage, but certainly a great platform for expanding the reach of your book. And ultimately, we talked about the fact that we want whatever we're doing to have impact, but a book can have an enormous impact if it strikes up or touches off a movement in society or within business, let's say, but in the culture of business, if it started a movement, that's incredible. And teaming up with someone with an organization like SCORE would help that happen. It's going to help me make weed strategy the same thing, a movement within business because of my collaboration with NASDAQ. And so the more we did this, the more we explored that, the more we realized, my God, there's a lot of things to do. And I started getting inspired. So I left that conversation saying, I've got to do my next book as well. I've been on the fence about whether I wanted to do another one. I have a great one in mind. And just talking with you, Dan, I was like, I got to do this. I need to get you. You inspired me because you were saying I'm going to take the next 30 days to get my book started. Damn it, it's going to happen. And so I thought I got to do the same thing. So there is that big benefit, I think, to having. I think the biggest benefit to all of this is having. I don't know. I'm not sure how many people would be in the room, but a lot of smart people in the room, all working toward one. I guess sort of brainstorming toward one unified conclusion. I think that would be incredible.
Yeah, can I say one thing about that, Stu?
Yeah.
So, like, the idea of having a structure in a mastermind, like, I just think about what you did with me. You walked me through mindset. You walked me through unfair advantage. You walked me through radical collaboration. You pop one idea, you pull out one idea into each of those, you get this bigger vision, and in a very short period of time, light bulbs turn on. And then you could just go through people, like, everybody gets 5 minutes to just brainstorm out, or 10 minutes, whatever, some set period of time, so that you get to see everybody. Then the next week you come back and things have gestated in your mind and new things come up. Anyway, I just found that high level going to lower created a bigger vision very fast. And I get more and more excited about what you had to say. I mean, I've read your book twice now. I read, and this session crystallized so much. Anyway, that's my 2 cents for
That's
a
excellent.
mastermind.
Excellent. Well, I think really it's probably a mixture of the two. And what was really interesting was, as I was watching your journey, because again, if any of you don't know Dan, you should connect with him. And I guess we're on day 28 of 30.
Yeah.
Right now, shoot, it's almost over. But still connect with Dan if you'd like. But as you went through that process, you drew a lot of people in, and I don't, Carl, you were one of those people who, I mean, you've been really active on Dan's posts. And did you know each other before?
Yes, I'm glad to say we did and do, and I would advise all of you to connect with Dan, because he's a great guy, and I'm sure one or two of you that have spoken might even be interesting guests on Dan's Winback Marketing podcast. But what I was going to say was, go back through all of Dan's posts, starting at day 1, and follow the journey. There is so much in there. I reckon you've got another book to write, Dan, just about your journey. Okay, and I'm serious about that, because there are so many struggling authors, potential authors, that never get there because they don't know what their unique advantage is. They don't know what they're going to have to go through to do it. So I'm interested in writing a book. That's why I kind of really connected and engaged with that, because it means a lot to me.
Good.
So it's a really valuable journey that you've shared, Dan. So don't just leave that behind on day 31. Remember, there's value in that as well.
I want to just ask a really gauche question, but how many of you would be interested in joining a mastermind with us? We don't have one together, but
put another survey up, Stu.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Does anyone have any closing thoughts? Because we've got a minute left, and I want to be respectful of your time. Anyone have any closing thoughts about unfair advantages? By the way, they're not illegal. We're not talking about anything that's illegal. They're just advantages that are decisive in your winning of business that your competitors can't match. It's like being a fly on the wall. It's how they would describe your advantage is that it's unfair. And I want to just say, Ashley, you've been participating, but we haven't heard you yet. Do you have a final thought you want to share with us?
No, I think this is wonderful. You have my mind churning about really thinking through these different advantages, and I'm especially intrigued to think more about things that can't be replicated or can't be replicated easily by others.
Yes, I think I'm just trying to remember. Did you say that you had a bubbly personality?
I sure did.
I think I can hear it. Well, it is great. That's a nice advantage. I don't know if we could qualify it as an unfair advantage yet, but it certainly is nice to talk with you. I'm glad. Thank you all for joining us. And I would say, if you want to stick around, I'm happy to stick around for a few more minutes. But I also want to respect everyone's time. I think that's not an unfair advantage. This is something you should do. So, but if you haven't, we're going to get back to everyone with an executive summary of what we've discovered here today, and I thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Stu. This was tremendous.
And I'm going to. There's someone named Sinotar. I'm not sure if. Oh,
hey, Stu. Sorry.
No problem.
Yep, my first name is Chris. And that's
Chris.
I'm not sure why it popped up, probably because using Zoom, and I don't use Zoom very often.
Ah, got it. Okay, got it. Well, I was thinking that's a really unusual name. Where are you? I've never heard the name Sonotar
Yeah.
before.
So yeah, first name is Chris, and my last name is quite a mouthful. It's Notar Francesco.
Ah, got it. No wonder. Well, Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Any thoughts, Chris? I mean, just and any unfair advantages that you have, any that you'd like to have, or any does anyone have any interesting collaborations, by the way? You could also just pop your hand up. I mean, I've got one in, I keep mentioning it, but I'm amazed that I have this collaboration with NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And that came about because I spoke for them I was a speaker. That makes you then an author in residence. That's pretty cool. So they stuck that in my signature file. I'm a NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center author in residence. But I got to know their executive director, Nicola Corzine, and I asked Nicola when I was writing the book, would you honor me? Would you? And Dan, I wonder if Dan Pfister, choose the person who writes your foreword very, very carefully and very strategically. So I asked Nicola if she would write the foreword, and she said yes. And I don't know, I wasn't driving, but I would have crashed the car if I was driving. Like, oh my God, that's incredible. because the people who write the foreword to your book, by the way, a book is an unfair advantage, isn't it? But the people who write the foreword to your book, cast them carefully, because it is like casting a movie. And so that brought NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and injected it into my book. That's wonderful, because who's going to pay attention to a book about weeds and business strategy? But so that helped a lot. And then after it launched, I was talking to Nicola and I said, I promised to launch a new award, the Total Weed Award. It cracks me up. And I love calling people total weeds anyway, but, and then they'll say, oh my God, Stu, thank you so much for calling me that. But I said, there's this award that I was going to launch, or that I mentioned that I would, or announce that I would launch in the book. And I'm just wondering, could we collaborate on that, on that award? Could the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center become the home of the award? She said, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. It's one of those things you get off the phone and you have to process it for a day. And so I was just thinking, wow, that really elevates this project. And it's all about these interesting forms of collaboration that bring new unfair advantages. And so that's a big one. But another one is that I'm one of the Wall Street Journal cartoonists. I mean, I use cartoons all the time to break through to people and connect with people and or to connect with an enormous audience. And it's a big unfair advantage. If I'm the guy who drew the cartoon that everyone saw, that's cool. That's a great unfair advantage. Everybody knows me. Everyone wants to talk to me, and it really plays out in a really interesting way. So we don't have to be SpaceX. We don't have to be billionaires to foster these unfair advantages. And I think that's incredible. They can be really simple. I live on an island a little bit north of Seattle in the Puget Sound, and so it's an island. It's an island economy, and so we have a couple of stationery shops or business supply stores, and only one of them, is also a FedEx drop-off point. That alone is an unfair advantage, because that causes us to all stop in, because if we're going to ship by FedEx, then FedEx has just given them this free promotion to drop all the business people in. And we've got a lot of people who work from home on the island, so it draws all of us into their shop. It's a great unfair advantage. You don't have to be a billionaire to have these, and you don't have to spend a lot of money even to have them in a lot of cases. So I think they're one of the most fascinating parts of using weed strategy. Still, we've been collaborating for a long time, and I'm just curious, do you have perhaps any closing thoughts?
I think you've talked a lot about the value of collaborating, and we've been trying lots of different formats to do that. All I would say is, if this is something that you want to try, get out there, have a go at it. I mean, we've structured things, unstructured discussions. we learn every time we're doing it. What was great about today is it really started to validate some of our thinking about where the value is in getting people together to talk about this topic. And it sounds like even in the short amount of time we had, that one or two ideas started to show themselves. So it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today and to meet you all. I'm really looking forward to seeing what we do next and see how we can help. And good luck with defining your unfair advantages.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us too. And Dan Pfister, thank you thank you for that conversation. That was great. But then also to be able to share it in the group, I think was also very helpful. Thank you all so much for joining us today. If you have any other questions, maybe you want to ask them privately, or you're welcome to do that. And we will be back to you with an executive summary. Let's see where we go from there.